Hi everyone, I'm Meredith Hutchison Hartley, and welcome to the Hidden History of Business podcast. Today I want to talk about water. A few days ago, my husband and I were making dinner. We both happened to have a night off, and we started talking about the extremely romantic subject of desalination, right? Sexy talk there. What brought it on is I'd been reading the news, and I read a quote from a female U.S. politician discussing water regulations in California right now to deal with the drought. And her response had been, well, we don't need these restrictions. Why don't you just build more plants and more reservoirs? I mean, there's plenty of water. You're a coastal state. There's tons of water right there, right? I am paraphrasing. If you Google it, I'm sure you'll find the politician. I don't want to give her more attention. The key there, though, is that what we were discussing is desalination isn't an easy thing. You can't just take water out of the ocean and magically take the salt out and turn it into drinkable water, at least not in a economically simple way. Desalination plants are extremely expensive and they take a lot of energy. And part of the problem in LA is that a lot of their energy comes from places like Lake Powell and the dams that create electricity there, and that's fueled by water. So in order to make water through desalination, you need energy, which unfortunately is frequently produced by water. It's a nasty catch-22. And while we were talking about this, I remembered an article I read last April about Lima, Peru, and how they're dealing with their drought and their irrigation issues. Now, Lima is the second largest desert city in the world. Only Cairo is larger. It has an immense population of, I think it's 9 million, and a lot of Peru's coastal cities are desert, which they run into the same problem LA does. You have this giant body of water next to you, but you can't drink any of it because it's so salty. The situation in Peru is further complicated by the fact that they have the Andes there. The Andes have more than 2/3 of the world's tropical glaciers, meaning there is a lot of water in Peru, but it's not spread out over the land in an easily accessible way. And this has been an escalating problem in Peru for decades. Back in the 80s, they started trying to address it, and they have tried everything for Lima. They levy a tariff all over the country for water access. They have tried desalination. They use waste treatment plants. The majority of the country is using some kind of sanitized or waste-treated water, and even then, it is still extremely difficult to get access to enough clean water. Most of the country's water utilities are going bankrupt because there just isn't enough money. And that is despite Peru investing on average more than $200 million a year into their water infrastructure, going from about 1985 to 2005. And after that amount more than tripled. It got closer to $800 million per year. And despite that, they keep running into water problems. Now, back in April, I ran across an article. It was reported in Fast Company, but it was referring to an article in the New Scientist about how an NGO in Peru that is trying to look into the past to solve their problem. They're looking to an ancient pre-Incan civilization called the Wari. Well, first off, what we know about the Wari is very, very sparse because they didn't leave us a lot of written records. In fact, any. They know that they existed. They know that they had a complex political and economic structure. They found a few undisturbed tombs that have 60 people in them and extremely complex technological works, products, jewelry, artwork, things like that. We know that they were an advanced civilization for the ancient world. Part of what they did, though, is they built something called an amunas. And these are these stone canals that start all the way up in the top of the Andes. And they run all the way down the mountains, and they feed these springs at the base of the mountains. So they're bringing the glacial runoff down to the foot of the mountain very, very quickly and efficiently. Rather than waiting for it to filter through streams or through the soil, they just put them into these canals and they run them down. And these existed thousands of years ago. This is pre-Inca civilization. So this NGO is now raising money and working with a U.S. group called Forest Trends to grout these ancient canals to help bring that water more efficiently down to the base of the mountains where it can be used for irrigation. It can be brought to the city of Lima. And they figure that if they can do this, it will reduce the city's dry season water deficit up to 60%. And the cost would only be about $23 million. That is a teeny fraction of what the country has been dropping on water infrastructure for a very long time. And they expect that they only have to charge an additional 5% user fee to fund the framework. And that's really interesting because we run into drought problems all over the world. Sao Paulo has one. California obviously is dealing with a horrible one. We see them throughout the equatorial regions. And when I read this article, what I see again is the idea that all of our problems have been solved before, that there are no new problems. If we are dealing with drought here, someone in history solved the drought problem before. But our bias is to try to solve it with more technology, desalination plants, water treatment. And I'm not saying that those are bad ways to do it. Those are very critical, life-saving technologies. But many times we can strengthen and really get bigger bang for our buck. We can strengthen our response and our solutions by combining that new technology with the simple solutions of the past, which involves simply getting that water down from the Andes in a more efficient way. And the nice thing is someone already did it for us. So rather than having to completely build entirely new structures, they can look to the past and they can solve that problem again by going back to how it was solved before. That's one of the reasons that this really embodies everything that I love about the hidden history of business, that all of our issues with supply chain management, with resources, with economics, all of these were solved at some point in the past by someone who had less sophisticated technology than we did, fewer resources than we do now, but they did more. They did more with less. And I love looking at that. So I really encourage you to, you can go to our website. It's www.hiddenhistoryofbusiness.com. And you can read more about Lima Peru's water situation and also find other notes and resources related to our other podcast subjects. I'm Meredith Hutchison Hartley for the Hidden History of Business podcast, and thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the subject that we discussed today, you can find multimedia content, links to articles we discussed, and videos on our website at www.hiddenhistoryofbusiness.com. You can also find us on Facebook as The Hidden History of Business and on Twitter as well. Thanks for listening.